to introduce myself a bit more, I'm the Head of Digital Creative and Tech at the Business Growth Hub. We have a suite of services designed to help digital creative and tech MDs and SEOs and CEOs scale and grow their companies. Prior to this, I was Divisional Director for Reading Room and their youngest ever company director at 23. And really my presentation today is to tell you about a belief I hold, which is that hiring middleweight staff is by far and away your biggest hiring risk. It might be a bit controversial. There'll be some of you that got job adverts out at the moment, screaming for talent. You've got lots of new business coming in, and actually it feels the easiest thing to do to get someone to hit the ground running who's got a few years skin in the game. But I just want to tell you a little bit more about why I believe that to be true. So, risks of hiring middleweight. Well, they're ultimately less flexible. They've probably come just from being junior or only just stepping up into middleweight. So they've just been shaped into someone else's way of working, and then you're taking on all of that baggage when they come and work for you. So if that's been set well, great, but 9 times out of 10 you'll want to mould them into your way of working and your approach to business. They're less likely to seek help. We see this a lot where I would hire people in middleweight, they didn't ask questions. We would find that would hold back not only them but the company, and it was really challenging to try and get that into them as an approach and way of thinking. This for me is a really big one. It stunts the progression opportunities within your business. So if you're hiring at junior, at middleweight, at senior, then frankly, you have nowhere for everyone to go, which is actually adding risk onto your churn rates. Middleweight market is the most buoyant. Kind of speaking to that last point, and being in this position, the time in my life where I got the most, probably 10 a week, LinkedIn messages saying from recruiters, from other business owners saying, well, we've got this job opportunity, will you come talk to us, how can I have a call? It's when I fit that middleweight 2 years-ish experience bracket. And unfortunately, the market the way it is, it's not unknown and not perceived negatively if you do move jobs after 2 years, 18 months, and so it's adding more risk. And frankly, they have none of the benefits of a really senior hire's track record. So you'd be far better hiring at that really senior level where, yes, they do have the track record to gain credibility with your key accounts, rather than going in that mid-market where really they kind of don't have the benefits of either. So I'll quickly whiz through some of the benefits of growing your own junior talent. Finding great people is really, really tough. So take ownership of that problem rather than making it a market issue, make it your own because you've got more control. By focusing on senior and junior, you can introduce schemes like mentoring, which we found, certainly at Reading Room, is really rewarding for everyone. We did pair development a lot. It's the same kind of theory amongst all the disciplines that you have within your organisation. So that's a really key one to focus on. And then just the kind of benefits that you'd expect. They generate new ideas, they're passionate, they want to impress, and so they're really mouldable, which is always great. But this is the problem. That's all lovely, rose-tinted glasses, but you get clients that say this regularly. So this isn't just this might be a client. This is Phil Jones, MD of Brother UK, who said, we will fall out with you when you start migrating junior people onto the account. We hosted a dinner with Phil where he shared some of the kind of strengths, weaknesses, pitfalls, etc. of generally pitching to an organisation like his, and this is one that I then spoke to him afterwards about, because for me it is fascinating, and frankly for him, he's going, well, I'm not being funny, but don't come to the pitch with this heavyweight senior team that you tell him is going to actually deliver, and then what I find is that you've just transitioned all of your junior members of staff onto the account because you're trying to attract your new sexy client. For those of you that are a fan of the programme Catfish, you'll understand my reference. So, to grow junior staff and gain their credibility with your key accounts, I believe you need to do 3 things, which we did effectively. So, you need to nurture that talent, You need to help them establish themselves both in the market and with your key accounts. And you need to have an actual strategy for transitioning them to work with your most senior accounts. So what do I mean by nurture? You have to prioritise soft skills. I would like to think you will all have great mechanisms for teaching the technical skills that they need to deliver the role. But communication and influence are massively important to every single member of your team, especially the junior staff that you're expecting to punch above their weight quite early on. So if you're putting them into situations where, frankly, they're not able to have an exchange with a senior person where they come across credible, then it doesn't matter how good they are at their job. Ask open questions. This is a big one. You know, when you spot the talent, you need to give them the breathing room to see what their capabilities are like beyond the standard management of that staff. You know, if you're just closely managing them to do a job, you'll never really see those that are going to be capable in this space. External mentors. So this for me was a really interesting one because this allows you to actually engage your clients and help them realise that they want to de-risk their accounts by having great members of the team. So one thing that we would do really effectively was actually, it was often from our clients, we'd ask them to be mentors for some of our more junior staff, because if actually they're involved in shaping them and they can kind of pass on some of their knowledge, that was really valuable, as well as that kind of internal skill side of things, because if they can hold their weight with those kind of people, that's the skill you want them to learn. Exposure to the top. So this, for me, in my personal story, was massively valuable. And Reading Room was, we had an office in Manchester, London, Singapore, Australia, Hong Kong, Thailand. So it was massive international agency, which is great in many ways, but we often struggled to spot people doing good work, especially the CEO. You know, they wanted visibility of that and her direct reports. And so I put in place a really simple solution of brag at readingroom.com or whatever your organisation's called. And it just allowed us to surface the great talent. It was a great way to recognise staff, etc. And then the CEO found that a great way to then pull in those people and align herself with them. And for me, this was when I got the opportunity to go and work in Singapore. So I was, at the time, what I thought was going to launch a key account and help train up some staff there. Essentially was a bit like being on The Apprentice for 3 months, where it was very intense, and I would get pulled in regularly into a room with our CEO going, right, we've got this problem, what do you think about this staff structure, supply chain issue here, or big client problem. And actually all she was doing, it was like a long extended interview period. The amount of time and attention she took through that was massive, but I got on that plane as a project director and I got off it back in Manchester, heading up the Manchester office. So really what you're trying to look for is how are they going to cope in the deep end. And it's kind of fine if your organisation doesn't have a sort of shallow end, so to speak, where you can hire juniors and handhold them really nicely, because that's a lovely situation we'd all like to have. But you might, not have the capacity to do that, or you might not have the structures in place and you're growing rapidly. That's fine. You can still hire juniors, but you're looking for juniors that have high resilience, that can deal with change well, that work well under pressure. And that is a personality trait. That doesn't matter how many years of experience that you have. And so you can still hire junior even if you're in the position where you can't afford to sort of handhold. Secondly, establish. It is your responsibility to craft the track record of your staff. You must pay time and attention into how you're building their credibility externally as well as with your accounts. Now this sounds a bit counterintuitive because the bigger personal profile they have, the more they're likely to be, to attract your LinkedIn posts, etc. But frankly, if they're great and you don't treat them well or you don't do this stuff, they're going to leave anyway. But this will allow you to really make them credible. in the marketplace and with your key accounts, and that can be putting them forward for awards, for example. I go to meetings now where it was an award I won when I was back at Reading Room 3 years ago, and people are like, oh yeah, I know, I saw, that drum award or whatever it was, which for me is mad. Like, it just feels like a lifetime ago. As I say, I'm probably a believer in you're only as good as your last achievement, which I shouldn't be, but it is mad how much that helps. Act before they ask. I mean pay when I talk about this. If you are going to hire junior staff and really want to back them and put them into senior positions, then you have to take consideration for what they would get if they were to jump about in the market. And no one likes to receive a pay rise if they have asked for it and then frankly feel like it's owed to them when they've had to fight tooth and nail. I never asked to be a company director of Reading Room. I was pulled into a room, told I was invaluable to the company, they wanted me to make me a company director, and this was my new pay packet. And the impact that had on my loyalty to the company was tremendous. Emotional resilience. So, all well and good putting these lovely people who've got relatively junior track records into the limelight and thrusting them there. You have to make sure that they have got the emotional resilience to go with this. I can't stress this enough. I had the right skills and the right capability to be a company director at 23, and I evidenced that in the way that I grew the company afterwards. But I had to deal with the fact that I was 23 and I was managing people who were over double my age. I was the youngest person in the office, which didn't really help. If I'd have had a few people below me, that might have helped. So that was fine. I could kind of get the people on board, but I also had to deal with that from a client perspective. I shouldn't tell you the story, I'll change names to protect guilty. We had a really big enterprise client. It was household name, you'd all know it, and it was the first client that I managed of that scale. So I was super excited. And I was taking over from someone who could speak Spanish, and the guy who ran the account was half Spanish, so they would regularly have their meetings not in English. So I met him, shook his hand, said, really great to meet you, really excited to run your project. And I said, unfortunately, speaking Spanish is not one of the services that I'm going to be able to offer, and laughed. He stood back, looked me up and down and went, I have no doubt of the services that you'd be able to offer. And at that moment, I'm like, right, you've given me one of 3 routes here. I can tell you to F off like I would a stranger in the street. I can go along with it, which I wouldn't do in the month of Sundays, or I can kind of give you a kind of get out of jail free card so you can realise how stupid you've been, and just kind of plead ignorance and said, I'll always run your project on time and to budget. And he kind of stared him out, he gulped, and we got on with it. But if you're putting staff in these positions, they've got to be able to kind of handle themselves, and you've got to make sure that you've got the kind of feedback mechanisms to make sure that they're looked after. So yeah, that was lovely. So yeah, what you're doing to build emotional resilience. Okay, transition. This is valuable no matter whether it's a senior member of staff or any other a junior member of staff or any other member of staff. We all go through times where the phone goes, something happens, you want to be able to stick to a client deadline, and frankly, you're going to need to pull someone else onto it. So having the ability to build redundancy in your organisation in terms of flexibility of staff on different accounts is really valuable. It seems really obvious, it is really obvious, I'm going to say it anyway. Be really deliberately transparent about this. When I quizzed Phil, how do I do this? Because that's not okay for you to just make that statement. We're in a world and we're in a market where talent is really, really challenging, and I need the ability to be able to put other people on your account. And he's going, it's fine, don't worry about it, but just tell me at the start of a meeting that someone there is training, or that they are junior and that they're coming through. So don't be afraid to do that early on, rather than try and kind of sneak them in, so to speak. Proximity is everything. I believe this amongst many reasons and things in life. But this is about making your staff the exceptions to the rule. So, oh, I hate all X. oh no, but no, I don't mean my neighbour, like they're lovely, like she's great, like she's, you know, you want all of your staff to be the exception. So if you create that proximity with them and with the clients that you need them to be aligned to, then they'll struggle to say no. They won't see that as an issue. They'll say, don't transition juniors onto my account, except that one person who I know is really, really good. Process over people. This for me is, if you can nail this, it has so many different benefits, but this is quite a stretch. People buy from people, fine. It's kind of a well-known thing that people will say. You know, I think there's quite a lot of truth in that. However, the delivery is a completely different ball game. And what you want to do is get your clients so in love with the process you're about to take them through that, frankly, they just believe that you're going to have a team there that's ready to deliver that to its best ability. But what they love is the process, not the person that is stood next to them in that pitch. And I'll talk about more about that in a moment. Finally, establish your growth, your talent growth methodology, your method for doing this. Give it a name, put it in a pitch. This is, again, it's about getting your clients familiar with the concept that, by the way, it's a massive risk if in a year's time you've only had exposure to the same 4 people that are on your account. And we want to make sure that we've built that redundancy into our team and into your project. So if we have team changes, that's no problem, because people leave, these things happen. And if you've already got them comfortable with the notion that you're prepared for that, you have a methodology for how you grow talent and how you introduce them, and it's very deliberate, then the conversation becomes a whole lot easier. This needs to be, again, underpinned by your staff's ability to communicate and influence. So when they get in those situations, they do hold their own and come across very credible. So process over people, I just wanted to pick this story out. Were any of you recently at the event that Business Growth Hub and Form ran? So yeah, a couple of you. AJ and Smart, if you've not heard of them, follow them on Instagram instantly. They are an incredible outfit based over in Berlin. They're actually partnering with us on a program that we're just about to launch called Amplify, and they went all in on design sprints. So the Google design sprint methodology, and they charge a very high premium to that, to the likes of Adidas and Lego and Airbnb and Slack. And Johnny doesn't deliver, now this is the founder, Johnny, that's Jake Knapp, inventor of the Google Design Sprint. Johnny doesn't deliver any of those sprints anymore, ever. He sells them all though, like he is a big part of their sales. And that's because they don't care at that point, they're bought into this methodology and how effective that's been for their the previous clients. And so he won't include, if you see a sales deck, it doesn't include any bios of any members of staff. And if you ask him as a client to send over those bios or any CVs, he completely refuses. So it's irrelevant. Don't get me wrong, he's still got challenges, but his challenges are just about hiring the right people. They're not about introducing them to the clients. You must kind of temper this with how you're measuring client satisfaction, because you want to make sure that obviously this is working. There's lots of ideas in here, some of which you'll try, some of which may work, some of which you may want to tweak. So obviously it kind of goes without saying. So nurture, establish, transition. These are the 3 things I think you need to grow your junior talent and transition onto key accounts. If you take this approach, I strongly believe your clients will not feel shortchanged because you've been completely transparent with them, and actually you positioned it as de-risking their project for the fact that more people can be engaged. Your staff will have room to grow, so you're more likely to have less staff churn. And you also, as a business owner, have redundancy and flexibility for the unexpected. It's the game we're in. You all know that this is the case, and one call in one day can change things around, so you need to have that redundancy. Completely appreciate you haven't all got a blank canvas, and you'll be at all different stages, and so some of these things, it sounds like great if you're a startup, put this in from minute 1, but what's my doable first step tomorrow? And for me, that is around the your talent growth methodology. Literally give it a name. Put it in the next pitch you do, or put it in the next conversation that you have with a client, so they know that they're in safe hands around that often elephant in the room. I have been to so many pitches where they say, bring the team that are going to be delivering this. And one of the questions that we're given is, will this genuinely be the team that are delivering for us? So you need to be able to have a really eloquent answer for that. So just kind of some key takeaways. Avoid hiring middleweight if possible. Prioritise communication and influence. Proximity is absolutely everything. Make sure your staff are the exception to the rule. Build that emotional resilience and design your talent growth methodology and give it a name. Thank you very much. If you've got any questions, I'll have to answer them.